saying is this. So where do you set the limit in respecting the other way of life? I see, and I want to provoke you here consciously, I see two limits. Why? Because I don't think there are simply different ways of life. First, every way of life has its own antagonisms covering them up. Second thing, every way of life is universal in the sense that it incorporates some norms how to treat others, other ways of life. So, okay, let me tell you so that we don't go into this refugee problem where things are much more complex, I know. Let me tell you a thing that happened in my own country, Slovenia, I think some 10 years ago. We have a minority, but there are some 10, 20,000 of them, Roma, the racist way, gypsies, no? And from one of the Roma family, a girl escaped to the police claiming my family, my father did a prearranged marriage and sold me to another man, I don't want this, and so on. Okay, then what to do? Then the Roma leader of their group said, and he was right, but are you aware that arranging marriages is a key feature of how our community reproduces itself? If you take away this from us, then maybe we will survive as doing some stupid folkloric dances, music, or some gypsy barbecue or whatever. But as a way of life, we will disappear. So what do you do here? He's totally right to claim that if you protect the girl, you don't respect their way of life. Again, what do you do here? And here, this is what idiots call Pegida moment. I think that we should just, when they accuse me of defending Western rights, no, I don't mean Christianity and oppression and so on. I simply mean a certain level of sexual and religious, and so on, freedom and tolerance. I think that, for example, whichever minority, including Christian minorities, like all those fundamentalists who terrorize their children, that we have the right to say, oh, sorry, this is terror on children or women, the state has to intervene. It goes without saying that the state should punish even more any violence against them, against others. But that's a crucial point. And the second point, here things for me get problematic. The problem for me with different ways of life is that what if one way of life finds intolerable some features in another way of life? Like, what if they find intolerable homosexuality and publicly attack it and so on? And this would be, if you ask me, my limitation. In other words, people who criticized me emphasized how refugees are not simply foreigners to whom we should show hospitality. We should accept them absolutely as equals, and we should recognize them. They should enjoy the same rights as the members of the diverse communities that make up Europe. I totally agree. I'm just adding, but which are these same rights? Where do you stop with women's rights and so on and so on? Why am I emphasizing this? Here things get a little bit more complex. Because, you know, I claim that those who say, but listen, Arabs or whatever Muslims were oppressed. They don't yet have our sense of women's rights. We are now fighting other bigger battles. Let's tolerate that a little bit and so on. I think that you are terribly patronizingly, this is true racism, underestimating them. For example, since I know well the situation on the West Bank, Palestine, Ramallah, and so on, they have a couple of rapper bands, like the most famous one, the lead singer is Tamer Nafar. He's a wonderful figure. I'm proud of him to be my friend. He's at the same time fighting Israeli oppression. He was arrested, all you want, but also singing rapper songs against honor killings in his own community, starting a movement there. And you know what's so typical? One would have expected liberal Israelis who pretend to be friends of Palestinians to support him. No, everyone is embarrassed. Why? Because he doesn't fit this idea of a primitive Palestinian that needs... No, sorry, he's totally enlightened and so on. And then something, this is the point of my story, happened there which I found so breathtakingly disgusting. This guy, Tamer Nafar, gave recently a talk, I think it was UCLA, some big American campus, and he sang a couple of songs, among others also this song protesting honor killings. Of course, there were stupid pseudo-radical leftists there who attacked him immediately, claiming that, but you know, even if Palestinians are doing these honor killings of their women who allegedly betray them, they are doing this only because of Israeli oppression. We shouldn't mention this now, and so on. And you know what he said? A friend of mine recorded his answer. It's a beautiful one. To his critics there. When you criticize me, you criticize my own community in English to impress your radical professors. I sing in Arabic to protect the women in my own hood, and so on and so on. So that's my formula, not let's tolerate all that they are doing because of the higher struggle against whatever. No, what we should do is desperately fight for somehow, I know it's difficult, but bringing together our struggles, gay rights, whatever you want, abortion and so on, and their rights. If we make any compromises here, either the Western cultural imperialist compromise, fuck their rights, they are too primitive, we should just impose on them our struggles. This is horrible. And I will give you a funny example which happened in ex-Yugoslavia 20 years ago when the war was going on in Bosnia. Some Bosnian feminists showed me a letter they received from some American feminists who wanted to show sympathy for Bosnians, poor women, victims of rape. And in order to establish communication, they sent them a questionnaire, a letter. And it was so implicitly racist. Like, first question was, do you, like kind of vulgarized Judith Butler, do you think that woman has an eternal essence, or do you think that feminine identity is performatively constructed through discursive practices, and so on? You see my point. If cultural imperialism exists, this is it. But on the other hand, I also reject this Mugabe China line, which is, you know, if we do what we do to our women and so on, this is our specific way of life and so on. I think everything depends on bringing together these two dimensions. And I can guarantee you it can be done. Otherwise, all the talk of respect is bullshit. I mean, I had, for example,